Ready?
Always.
The Sarah Jane Adventures was one of the best parts of my childhood, being the best spin-off for Doctor Who. If you want to ignore Children of Earth, because that was beautiful, but as a child, this show captured everything I loved about Doctor Who. And I've recently rewatched it, and I really, really, really love Series 5. 3 episodes, and they all smash it out the park. So I thought I'd look back and see those other 3 unmade episodes and talk about them, because the show is amazing. I miss Elizabeth Sladen. With Sutek's return in Empire of Death and Legend of Ruby Sunday, I was thinking a lot about Sarah Jane's meeting with Sutek in Pyramids of Mars. So, yeah, here we go. Series 5 of Sarah Jane Adventures was only a half series, as only half the episodes got made due to the untimely passing of Elizabeth Sladen, with the other 3 having no choice but to be discontinued, with the exception of 1. So I'm going to look back at all of them today, read you the synopsis, and just tell you what my thoughts are. So, yeah, let's get into it. Meet Mr. Smith would have seen Mr. Smith be a human. It would turn Mr. Smith into a human being. And when I think of that idea and concept, I think of The Doctor's Wife, where the TARDIS was turned into a human being, so the actual machine could be devoured. So I thought this was going to be quite similar to it. After reading the synopsis, I'm not so sure. So the synopsis goes: while the gang are together in the attic, an alien called Osmo secretly releases a mutagene bomb in Sarah Jane's attic, which latches onto Mr. Smith's keyboard and suddenly turns Mr. Smith into a human who wears a bowler hat and pinstriped city suit, looking like the spitting image of John Steed. Mr. Smith embraces his newfound humanity by referring to himself as Smithy and is eager to explore in his new form. This leads to him experiencing joy with human life and eventually developing a romance with Carla Langer. However, he is secretly forced to do work for Osmo, which involves stealing valuables and tech pieces, as Osmo blackmails him with stabilizing shots that maintain his human form, while the gang realizes how much of a struggle it is to protect the Earth without relying on Mr. Smith. Part 1 would end with Sarah Jane catching Smithy in the act of stealing a diamond in a maximum security area at the Asquith Bank vaults, as she secretly traced his suspicious activities. But before she could do anything, Smithy catches her off guard and relieves Sarah Jane of her sonic while locking her in a bank vault. As Sarah Jane is trapped, she bangs on the door and tries to plead with Smithy, while Osmo's hologram secretly watches her and states that she would be better off in there, as he declares he has sinister plans in store for Earth. Part 2 would involve Skye leading the team as she tells Rani and Clyde that the 3 of them need to take on the role of Mr. Smith by looking through data resources and clues that could help them find Sarah Jane and Smithy. Osmo's true intentions would later be revealed in the second part, where the gang discovered that he was building a teleporter relay with the intent to attract aliens who are interested in buying the Earth. Smithy's behaviour would also make Clyde and Rani question their trust in people they confide in. The story would eventually end with Smithy reverting back to his Xyloc form after sacrificing his last stabilizer shot to stop Osmo, which comes at the cost of breaking Carla's heart. Just before Osmo is compressed and teleported away to an intergalactic prison, he attempts to warn Sarah Jane about Sky being the child of chaos, which would be another hint to Sky being the daughter of the sinister trickster, as it was previously going to be hinted in a deleted scene with Sky and Plark in The Man Who Never Was. So this episode would have included Sarah Jane, Clyde, Rani, Sky, Mr. Smith or Smithy, Geeta, Carla and Osmo. And I think that's a pretty good lineup, with obviously Geeta being there for Rani, and having obviously Carla's relationship with Smithy. This would have also put into Clyde's past, which, after what Clyde experienced in The Curse of Clyde Langer, having a father figure for Clyde, that would have been really good. And having Mr. Smith be in his human form, which, by the way, would have seen Alexander Armstrong portray Mr. Smith in person and making that his first appearance as himself in the Doctor Who universe. Well, that's up until he played that Reggie, I think his name was, in The Doctor, the Widow and the Wardrobe. But we don't. The less we talk about that story, the better. This story had so much potential, and I love it's so different, but it's also the same, and it's absolutely fantastic. And the plot's genius. Like, coming up with that was amazing. Like, having Mr. Smith be the villain again, I feel like maybe reusing a plot, but this time it's against his own will, because he's being blackmailed into doing so. But bringing out that human side in Mr. Smith would have been so good, but also having the characters figure out and try and protect the Earth without their need for Mr. Smith, without having their reliance on Mr. Smith. That would have been beautiful character development for each and every single one of them, as they'd all relied on Mr. Smith in every single episode, barring a good few couples. So there's 2 in series 1 where they can't rely on Mr. Smith. There's 1 in series 2 when they can't rely on Mr. Smith. Sarah Jane shuts down Mr. Smith in The Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith. So there's 1 in series 3, but he's always there as a prominent figure. I mean, there's also 1 in series 4, but in every other episode there's Mr. Smith. They've got to use him to solve the problem. Like, let's having a story where they can't go and ask Mr. Smith a question or find the answers from Mr. Smith. It's brilliant. I don't know if Mr. Smith would have retained his genius level IQ in his human form. By the sounds of it, I don't think he does. But I like that. And I'm so sad that I'm actually really sad we didn't get to see any of these stories. However, the next one, we did. The 13th Floor was adapted into an episode of Wizards vs. Aliens, another show by Russell T Davies and Phil Ford. And I know a lot of aspects of what was going to be introduced in Series 5 of Sarah Jane was put into Wizards vs. Aliens Series 2. And this story was one of them. So the story would have focused on Clyde and Rani spending decades trapped in an otherworldly forest, which could be accessed through a 13th floor of a newspaper office where Rani had earned her work experience placement. Ty would progress faster in that alien realm, which would result in them getting older together as a couple and having a child. The story would eventually end with them being rescued after that reality gets destroyed, and they would end up tragically losing their child in the process as they revert back to their younger selves and slowly start to forget their experiences in this realm. The characters would have been Sarah Jane Smith, Clyde, Rani, Skye, Mrs. Smith, Geeta, and 3 new characters called Willard, Rick, and Arnold, which would have been the alien janitor. Now, those of you who have seen Wizards vs. Aliens know how this goes, know how this story progresses. So, in Wizards vs. Aliens, you've got the protagonist, Tom Clark, and his friend Benny Sherwood. Then you've got, they battle these aliens called the Necros, which are magic-eating creatures who feed on wizards. Tom Clark, being a wizard, is their main foe, and at the end of series 1 they declare war on each other and the war begins, and that's what series 2 focuses on, that war between wizards and Necros. In series 1, one of the Necros, Lexi, disguises herself as a human to learn more about them and to trap Tom Clark. And that is a fantastic story, friend versus foe, or friend or foe, something like that. And that is the best of series 1, because it shows that if needs be, those two species can get along, and it starts that small little plot of Lexi and Tom's friendship, which this story in Wizards vs. Aliens delved right into, and it sparked that romantic tension between between those two alien foes. Now, I bring up friend or foe because this story sees Lexi go back into her human form to try and find her brother Varg, who has been trapped in the unearthly alien realm, which in this story is the Neverside, magic realm where alien technology or any type of technology doesn't work. It's just pure magic. Because of that, Lexi is trapped in her human form, and Tom and Lexi end up surviving while looking for Varg together. Then the rest of the story lives out. They grow old, they have a child together, Benny Jr. They get rescued, and all 3 of them, that's Varg, Lexi, and Tom, all forget about that encounter. Now, in the next episode, Lexi and Tom remember, I think Varg does as well, and they all remember that so these space rocks can help push the moon back. Not space rocks, these magic rocks can help push the moon back to end an endless eclipse. It's a fantastic series. If you're in the UK, it's on iPlayer, give it a watch. If you love the Sarah Jane Adventures, you're going to love this. It's got everything there had. Now, on to actually talking about what this would have meant in the Sarah Jane Adventures. Clyde and Rani, or Clarny, they have that kind of romantic tension. They both have a crush on each other. You could see that love blossoming throughout series 3, 4, and 5. That tension is there the entire time, and it's fantastic. And I'm so disappointed that we couldn't get this episode. I mean, I know why, and it's depressing and heartbreaking, but this story in the Sarah Jane Adventures would have seen exactly what the fans wanted at that time, is Clyde and Rani together. Clyde and Rani with a family. And how brilliant that would have been. How amazing it would have been for those two. And then to rip it all away right at the end would break their hearts. But like in the Wizards vs. Aliens, I think these two would have had dreams about that time and remembering that time. I think that would have been amazing. It'd be a good place to pick up now in RTD's new era, because these stories are rumoured to have still happened even though we haven't seen them, and I'll tell you why as we go into this is the one. This is the one which we desperately wanted to see. This is the big bang. This is the Stolen Earth Journey's End version of the Sarah Jane Adventures. The Battle of Banan Road. Wow. You'll see why my reaction to this as we go through this synopsis, but wow. The Battle of Banan Road would have been the final story in Sarah Jane Adventures Season 5. And that's obviously massive. But this is why I wanted this so much. And I want to see a version of this in RTD2. The trickster would have returned in this story. It would have been revealed that he had instilled his essence in Skysmith at the moment of her creation and manipulated events so she ended up with Sarah Jane. He would have awakened Sky's trickster half and used her to attack Sarah Jane. This would lead to Sarah Jane and the trickster battling for Sky's soul. The trickster would then proceed to turn Sarah Jane's attic into a tower that looms over London, trapping both Sarah Jane and Sky within. Luke, K9, Joe Jones, Santiago Jones, Professor Rivers and the shopkeeper would all have returned in this story, which would see the whole cast come together to witness the nightmare unfold around them on Banan Road. Clyde and Rani's parents would also witness everything in their surroundings and finally find out the truth of what their kids have been up to for all these years, which would lead to the whole cast uniting together once and for all in the final battle against the trickster. It would later be revealed that Sarah Jane had suspected Sky's lineage all along, as she had Sky's electrical properties analysed at the Pharos Institute prior to these events, while also sending Joe out to research trickster myths around the world, as Sky had grown taller in each previous serial and Sarah Jane was wary of the cryptic hints. The beginning of the story would see Sky's trickster half emerging and trapping Professor Rivers in a monitor while Joe discovers an ancient prophecy in a Peru temple that gives a warning about Sky. The shopkeeper would also realise that they've all been pawns in the trickster's plan and attempt to warn Sarah Jane, but arrives at the scene too late. With Sky's electrical field analysed, Professor Rivers would be freed, which leads to her and the Banan Road gang racing back to Banan Road to give Sarah Jane the vital information to overload Sky and revert her back to her human form. The story would end with Sky evolving into a dimensional entity that would banish the trickster from reality and guard him in an eternal prison forever. The webcast Farewell Sarah Jane, released on the 19th of April 2020 as part of Doctor Who Lockdown, alluded to the events of the Battle of Banan Road having still taken place in the Doctor Who universe, as Sky is mentioned to have manifested in her human form. And this also had a fantastic cast, being Sarah Jane Smith, Clyde Langer, Rani Chandra, Sky Smith, Mr. Smith, Luke Smith, K9, Geeta and Naresh Chandra, Carla Langer, Joe Jones, Santiago Jones, Professor Rivers, the shopkeeper and the trickster. What a cast. What a story. Now, with this being hinted at the webcast Farewell Sarah Jane, one of the most amazing bits to come out of Doctor Who Lockdown, it's not that far-fetched to say that if this story did occur in the Doctor Who universe, as it's hinted to have, then the rest of the series did as well. And that's, to me, is fantastic. And I'd love that, because I love these episodes. I love everything about them. 13th Floor, that was my favourite episode of Wizards vs. Aliens, and I would love to have seen that in the Sarah Jane Adventures, for reasons I have already stated. This story would have been the big finish, the end, would have been the perfect finale. And I would have been so happy to see Sarah Jane end here. Now, not only were we supposed to get this, but we were supposed to get 2 specials outside of season 5. There was a Halloween special planned and a Christmas special planned. Now, if you want me to do a video talking about these, let me know in the comments, because I kind of want to. I just don't think they'll be too relevant to this series or anything else. So yeah, I haven't really read up much on them. I just know that they exist, and I know that there were plans for 4 different Halloween specials. One of them was going to air, and 1 Christmas special, which was the only plan that they had apparently. So yeah, but back to this story. I think it's not that far-fetched to link this idea and these ideas with Ruby. We know, because Russell T Davies has said that her story isn't over yet. We know that she's coming back next year, and we know that there's going to be some link to her story next year. So, my theory is, what if he's reusing? Because he's been reusing parts of the Sarah Jane Adventures Season 5 in here. For instance, the whole Ruby being a foundling plot. So what if it's still a trick by the trickster and a trap, and she is the child of chaos? Or the new child of chaos? Because we know Sky's the child of chaos. What if she's a new child of chaos, and the trickster's attempt at the Doctor? If it is, we do get the trickster back, we could get a version of Sky back, which could get a version of the other characters back, Clyde, Luke, Rani, maybe even Maria. We could get them back. But the reason I say this about Ruby is because the snow is still unexplained. And the snow could be that hint, like it was that Sky was getting taller in each episode, which, by the way, I didn't actually notice. All of my rewatches, and I never noticed that. But with Sky getting slightly taller in each episode, and Ruby having snow whenever she got emotional or upset or she was put in danger, because Ruby didn't have the power to... Sutek didn't have the power to make Ruby sing that song or hide a song in her heart in the Devil's Chord. Sutek didn't have that power. The trickster could have, and this entire thing could just be one big trap, as the trickster is known as the god of traps. This is a theory which is going to be so far out with all of the connections in this video. It's probably not going to be a part and be a thing. But with the battle on Banan Road, that massive finale, that big fight, the shopkeeper, one of the biggest mysteries in the Sarah Jane Adventures, and we would have seen more, and I want that answer. I need those answers. Russell, if you see this, which you won't, I want those answers. Who the frack was the shopkeeper? Because every time I go back and rewatch series 4 and 5, that's the question. And knowing that he was going to return in series 5, like the finale, would have maybe given us that answer. Because he clearly had a plan there. He clearly had a plan with the captain. But who knows? Like, I want to know! Russell, I need to know! And Jo, I loved her. And I loved Santiago and the small little extra that he brought in Death of the Doctor. I loved them both in that story, and seeing them back with everyone like seeing Joe and Clyde reunite in Tales was beautiful, and I loved that. I loved them reuniting. They even mentioned the romance plot between Clyde and Rani, and how Clyde could never go talk to her. He thought it was too late. That was beautiful, and I loved that. And personally, I want to see some of these ideas back and given the justice that they deserve. So if we're going to get the Trickster back, we need to get these back as well. But yeah, that rounds off this video pretty nicely, and that's all from me. So this series would have been fantastic. It's already fantastic, with Curse of Clyde Langer being one of the best ever stories in the history of the Sarah Jane Adventures, and having 13th Floor in that as well, in that same series, would have made Series 5 a million times better than anything we'd had before. And just those 2 episodes. And that's beautiful. That was brilliant. So, yeah. Thank you all so much for watching. I know this video is a little bit different, but I had this idea and I was like, you know what? Let's do it. So thank you very much, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.